As you begin to develop your worksheets, you're going to find that you're going to be going back, you're going to be adding rows and columns and cells and getting rid of rows, cells, and columns. So you want to know really how to do it and do it well, because as you plan the design of this, you can really put yourself in a bind for adding things or taking things away because of different features in the workbook based on the way that you've laid out your worksheet. So first of all, what I'd like to do is just show you some examples of how it works, and then we'll come back to this grocery list, which is a template for Microsoft, and try to implement some things that we've shown already. So I'm going to go to Sheet 2. So at the bottom, I'm going to click on Sheet 2. And the way that this works is that when you want to insert a row or a column, you can actually choose a row or a column. But let's do this. Let's color code some of these so we can see the difference when we start making those changes. And let's do this. Just want a little bit different color somewhere there. It's just so when we do make some changes, we'll be able to see the differences here. So I'm going to color that up. All right. So now I'm going to insert a column. So when you insert a column, you choose the column by clicking on the header for that column, and you can right-click and choose Insert. Now, what's it going to do? Well, when you're working with columns, it inserts it to the left, and it picks up the formatting that's to the left as well. So I chose B, which was the blue color, and I right-clicked and Insert, and it's picking up the basic formatting here. Now, it won't copy the text or anything like that, but it does pick up the format, which makes sense. It also makes sense that it inserts it to the left, because if you're working with column A and you want to insert a column, you want it to be the left of A, then that's the only way that it would work. So that's why it's there by default. Now, when you choose a row just by clicking on the number and you right click and choose Insert, what it does is, again, it picks up the formatting of the one above it, okay, and it puts it, it moves everything down, which is important, because if you're working with row 1 and you insert a row, you want it to move everything down, and that now becomes the first row. Okay, so that's about as simple as you can do it. However, I want to also note that you can choose multiple rows and multiple columns at a time. So when I right click and Insert, I chose 2. I'm going to choose, let's see what happens when I choose 2 of these. I right click and Insert, and I get 2, and it's still picking up everything from the left. So you don't have to do it one at a time. You can choose multiples of that. Now, one thing that will happen is when you're working with cells and you're trying to insert cells, for example, let's say I want to put another cell here. I can right click and Insert, and it wants to know, okay, do you want to shift everything to the right, meaning anything that's after it to the right, shift cells down, so this is going to push down, or put in an entire new row or an entire new column, so that you can work with both of those. So you do get a little bit more options just by the right click. So I'm going to say shift cells down. I'm going to click OK, and you can see everything shifting with it, and that's fine. I mean, that looks good because it's picking up the formatting of the thing behind it, or above it, excuse me, and then it moves this down. So I wanted you to see that visually how that works, because you don't tend to think about what the impact is going to be until you get over to a sheet like this, where if you inserted a cell and you moved it down, not only does it impact the chicken and the fish and the hamburger and pork chops and steak, it impacts everything down here as well, because you're talking about moving the entire column is what you're doing to make room for that cell. Okay. Same thing if you told everything to shift to the right, it would push all of these things to the right. So inserting a cell is possible. You just got to be aware of what it's going to do to the rest of your worksheet when you make those changes. Now, if I'm here and I right click, and what I'm doing is I'm selecting the row, I right click and I do insert, I'm okay because there's nothing else over to the right here. Everything I'm working with is sitting right in front of me. So whatever I do here, let me just go across here, and I fill all this in. You know, I can work with it this way. We'll show you how to do that very quickly. You know, it fills all of this in, and that's no big deal. However, if I were to click on this column and I insert, it's not going to take these with me. It's going to leave those there. So I need to make sure I select more than one column. And not only is it moving meat and seafood, but everything else that's down here, which is baking and condiments. So I'm going to right click over the column headers and do insert, and I get both of those. A lot of the formatting's gone. Okay, but it's picking this all up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab these. Try that. And there we go. Okay, so now I can resize them to, you know, the sizes that I need, like this. Okay, and then I can go in and change these and start typing in. That was just a quick way to get the formatting back to the way we needed it. And again, it's a feature that we'll cover quite a bit as you start working with Excel. So inserting a row, inserting a column is great. You just got to be aware, what is it going to move around on your spreadsheet, especially if you are selecting the entire row or the entire column. Now, you can say, hey, I want to insert in here. Again, that's 4 cells here that are going to move to the right. So it's going to push all this stuff off to the right. So if you're not concerned about it, because you don't have to worry about putting 4 of them in here and pushing this out, it's no big deal. But again, just be very aware of where you're trying to insert information. So just to give an example on the cell, let's grab this and that, and I right click and I do insert. That's where we get shift cells down and right, and I'm going to do down, and that's fine, but look what it did to all of this. So now I'm going to show you how to delete. So if I right click here, and actually I need both of these cells, I can right click and I hit delete, and then now it's the opposite, shift cells up or shift cells left. We're going to do up, and I click OK, and now we're back in order. But I don't want these 2 columns, so I left click and drag over them, right click and delete. Those are easy ways keeping you there on the keyboard or on the mouse. And then again, I can right click on the row that I want to delete. And also, when we're talking about deleting, just like we were inserting, if I delete this row, it may not be just this information. If there's more information off to the right or farther down the spreadsheet, so when you build spreadsheets and you have different sections, you have to be very careful that you're not just out there deleting all the way across or all the way down and not being aware of what's in those areas. Now, you can, delete like this. Let me actually start from this side. Oh, it's not going to let me choose it that way. There we go. And then I delete. And then again, we're moving cells up or down or left or right. I'm going to click up, and it brings everything up. Now that works because everything that we were impacting was in this area from column B to column O. But if I had chosen less than that or more than that, then we could have a problem with the other parts of that worksheet. So word to the wise, inserting, deleting, putting all those things in different parts of your spreadsheet, you're going to have to be very careful and be very aware of what's going on around it. Now there are some other ways to also move a grouping of rows, a grouping of columns, and even cells, and have it cut and paste right away. So let me show you what I mean. First thing, what I'll do is I'm going to look at moving some rows here. So let's say I want to move rows 6 and 7. And normally, you know, if you grab and drag this, it'll say there's data here. Do you want to replace it? That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to basically do a really easy cut and paste, or cut and insert cells right away. So the way that works, select the rows and then just get the four-headed arrow around it. You can left click and hold. And then if you hold down Shift, look down the bottom left corner, it says drag to cut and insert cell contents. That's really slick because then I don't have to create all kinds of, you know, rows, or, you know, worry about content not shifting where I want it. So you see that long green line, wherever I release, that's where it will release the information. So I'm going to release the left mouse, there it goes, and then I release Shift. So at this point, it just moved whatever's on those two rows down. Now to do columns, you can do the same thing. You just have to select the columns, and then you grab the mouse, you grab the selection, you get the four-headed arrow, so you left click and hold, and you hold down Shift, and again down the bottom left, you just drag it, and wherever that green line lands is where it will move that information. Now I'm going to do that knowing that there's going to be a problem here, so let me show you what happens. I'm going to drag it, you know, left click is down and the Shift is down. But when I release the mouse, it says we can't do that to a merged cell. What's going on is this cell right here is all one cell. So you can't grab anything that crosses that because it doesn't know what to do with it. So it doesn't allow you to do anything. So the only way that this would work is you turn off merge and center. Actually, you need to turn it unmerge cells. So they're all individual cells now. That's what you want. Now this one is sitting in B2, and I'm going to move produce, or I'll just get produce. We'll do D, E, F, and G, and then I get the four-headed arrow, left click and hold down Shift, and then I'm going to move it over one, release your mouse, and then release Shift. So a very really clean-cut way to do that. You can also do that with particular cells. Now this one works easy because there's nothing there, but you see what it does to the highlight there. So I'm going to undo that. So I'm going to left click and hold it, hold down Shift, and then I'm going to move it up one, release the mouse. And unmerge, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to unmerge that cell. That's fine. Okay, so this works with rows, columns, and individual cells. And then just to make sure this gets fixed, I'm going to drag it across here and do merge and center again. And now I can't move columns until I undo that, but at least you'll see how you can move those things around. It's a really slick tool.